Senator, how are you?
I'm good.
Long time, right?
It's been 14 years. Is that right? Maybe a little longer?
A lot has changed,
I've had a few jobs quite since.
You were running when we spoke last. You were running for president of the Queens Young Dems.
Is that true?
That's correct.
That's a long, long time ago.
Sometimes my memory still works. Sometimes I forget. Well, maybe I choose to forget certain things. But look, let's get right into it, Senator. You're running for mayor. And I want to start by saying this. It's interesting. I follow you like I follow other folks on social media and stuff, and the vitriol is really bad. Sometimes I wonder why. It's like, Jesus, have you no sense of decency?
It's easy for people to hide behind a keyboard, right?
I know, but it's just sometimes it's like, wow, what have we become?
Yeah.
So it's just a little disheartening. This is just me, like, editorializing. Let's talk about your run, and first I want to talk about the staff shakeup, because I read a story where you changed fundraisers, and clarify. Is that not true? No.
Luis, I read the same story.
Yes.
Luis and Charlene are still very much with me. I was a little surprised, actually, when I got that inquiry. There really hasn't... I guess the only staff shakeup that you can say is that I hired New Blue Initiatives to do my digital fundraising.
How are you doing in the fundraising category?
We're doing okay. We're on pace. I'm really hoping to be able to qualify for campaign matching funds by the January 11th filing. We're doing both online and traditional fundraising, just face-to-face, me meeting with voters, meeting with people in the city who want to help my vision come to life.
Question, did you make any adjustments in terms of your messaging, in terms of your strategy post-Trump?
I think that overall it's been interesting to see how particularly Latinos are perceiving working class messaging. I think that there are many people saying that the Democratic Party has steered away from the working class, and yet I think what Trump tried to do was actually provide working class messaging that really resonated with people in a way that we don't like to see, but it's true, and it was effective. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but this is why it's important for us to talk about money, and not from the perspective of an ivory tower, but actually the ability for people to be able to not only pay rent, but save to buy a house. It used to be that you would rent in New York City in order to save enough to be able to buy a house, but that's just not possible in this economy, even if you've played by the rules, even if you've done everything that you've been told in your life that you're supposed to do, and it's just the math isn't mathing in that way, and it's a rough calculation for people.
Senator, related to that, let's pivot to Roosevelt Avenue and the Taskforce. What are your thoughts on this new thing, the Roosevelt Avenue Taskforce, enforcement, crime, prostitution? Is it working?
And the loan sharks.
Is it working?
Yes. In the loan sharks, I want to mention that because actually it's a big source of the violence that we see on Roosevelt Avenue that people don't often talk about. Everybody likes to talk about prostitution, sex work, and that sort of thing because it's what's most visible. What I want to see is the actual traffickers and the pimps get caught. Because the problem is, in all of my life, I've seen waves and waves of sex workers be arrested, but never the traffickers or the pimps. And that's a problem because if you just arrest the sex workers, it's only a matter of weeks or months before there's a new wave of sex workers. So what are you actually doing? So to me, it's about arresting, prosecuting, convicting the traffickers, but also making sure we have economic opportunity available for the sex workers to feel empowered and be able to have a better quality of life. But right now, we're not doing either of those things. He announced, and by he I mean Mayor Adams, Eric Adams announced the Roosevelt Avenue Taskforce, maybe 50 days ago or so. He said it was going to be a 90-day operation, and now it's been, and now we don't even see a police officer on Roosevelt Avenue. Actually, over the weekend, I walked from 74th Street all the way down to 111th Street, and I didn't see one police officer. So to me, it's a lot of the photo ops that he likes to do. I mean, it's been several months since he did a brothel bust on Roosevelt Avenue, and those brothels that got busted up, they reopened like the next day or the day after.
What do you say, Senator? People say that problem was there pre-Mayor Adams, and you've done nothing about it.
It is. It's a problem that's been there since I can remember.
But
right?
But people will say you were elected and you've done nothing about it. What do you say to those folks?
I say that's why I raised the minimum wage. I say that's why I invest so much work into securing apprenticeship money. I say that this is why I'm trying to do away with the barriers that would allow undocumented day laborers to join the ranks of the building trades. I know from watching Roosevelt Avenue my whole life, and remember, my first job was on Roosevelt Avenue and 83rd Street. I worked at a law firm there for 6 years, from 1999, actually 7 years, from 1999 to like 2006, where precisely what we did was bail out sex workers from jail and do personal injury cases with people who had, gotten hurt on the job. And I can tell you that we can take care of the cosmetics, but if we don't actually address the underlying reasons why there's this underground economy, then the cycle is just going to perpetuate itself.
When you say we, who are you referring to?
Well, I think that specifically when it comes to the NYPD, there's only one person in charge of the NYPD, right? Above the police commissioner is the mayor. That's it, bar none. Right? As state government, I mean, we have a bully pulpit that we can certainly use, but we as a state legislature don't have the opportunity to allocate additional funding to the NYPD or to sanitation. For example, there's no state sanitation department. So for us, it's very frustrating because, and maybe for me especially, because I do have experience at City Hall, I know that the mayor has just so much more power over what the city budget looks like. So even if the city council members were out there advocating for more funding, it really is the mayor's last word on what that looks like, because he's the one who tells city agencies what to do. He's the executive. And this is precisely why I'm asking for the job, because I don't want to just have a bully pulpit and be in a position where all I do is criticize the mayor. I want to be able to make those calls. I want to be able to actually get in there and say, well, this is what I want the NYPD to focus on. Why is it that we don't have, there's 20 blocks along Roosevelt Avenue without a trash can? Who made that decision? Why don't we restore and put those trash cans back on Roosevelt Avenue?
In some of those cases, have you reached out to the particular agencies as a member?
Oh my gosh, I have a litany of letters that we have written, phone calls made to commissioners and their staff members. I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation during the entire Adams administration.
Senator, question, what will you do on day one if you're elected mayor?
My gosh. On day one...
Three things you'll do.
Well, look, to think about this, in a practical way. Day one, you're supposed to let New Yorkers know who you've hired. So I would love to be able to roll out an all-star team of talented New Yorkers who are eager to make a name for themselves, who are ready to hit the ground running in their respective agencies on day one. And one of the things that I'd like to do differently that we've never had in New York City is to have a chief revenue officer. I want somebody to actually think outside of the box about how we can generate revenue for New York City, because remember, New York City can't levy its own taxes. So we're a little limited in what we're able to do, and I think there are some missed opportunities out there. And I do think it's worth having someone who's thinking about that all the time. Two, and I've been dying to do this, I want to make sure that the city is in compliance with the property tax law. You know, property taxes and the inequity in which the property tax is applied in New York is such that it hinders us building more housing, and it keeps a lot of families in the outer boroughs in a perpetual, hardship to be able to make ends meet. How is it that if you live in Richmond Hill, you pay $7,000 a year in property tax? I'm a renter here in Jackson Heights, and I pay $5,000 a year in property tax, right? Through my rent, right? The landlord pays for my unit, per unit, $5,000 in property tax. But if you own a brownstone in Park Slope, you pay $3,000 a year in property tax. That is unfair. But, for a long time we've heard, there has to be a city and state effort in order to make this better. But in reality, all we need is for there to be a mayor that is ready to tell the Department of Finance to do an equitable property tax assessment and simply comply with the law that actually exists, so that we can have a much more equitable landscape across the city. And actually, this would impact a lot of the housing that we want built in the outer boroughs.
But Senator, in all fairness to Mayor Adams, the task force started under Mayor de Blasio, and nothing. Okay. So I'm saying he can't be held to just totally the sole, basically.
I'm not blaming him. I'm just saying that that's what I would do on day one, because that is what I think needs to be done. You can blame whoever you want. I'm just saying that that's what I want to see, because we're in dire straits. It would actually generate a little more revenue than we've been making for the city, and it would be a great incentive for people to develop in the neighborhoods where we need the affordable housing the most.
What would be the third thing?
The third thing, I would declare a mental health emergency in New York City. I mean, look, I don't have a driver's license, right? And I take the subway, I take the bus all the time. I was on Steinway Street actually a few days ago, near where I grew up, and I was waiting for the Q101 up Steinway Street. 23 minutes. 23 minutes was the wait time for the Q101 in Astoria. And, quite frankly, it just, we for decades, and this is probably along the same lines. It's not just Mayor Eric Adams. It's people, before him. It's certainly governors, right? Because the governors are in charge of the MTA. But for a long time now, the MTA, because of the lack of investment, and it's been forgotten in many ways, despite most New Yorkers depending on public transit to get around, the MTA has become the de facto mental health facility. And that's not okay. That's not okay. A lot of people need help. That's especially true post-pandemic. I know people, and that my district was the epicenter of the epicenter for the pandemic. People lost a loved one. People lost several loved ones. People lost their caretaker. People lost their home. People lost their job. People lost all three. And at the end of the day, we have mental health facilities that Andrew Cuomo shut down over a decade ago. Some of them can be reopened, refurbished, and restaffed. We're going to have to build new ones too. But at the end of the day, we need to get serious about our mental health crisis, which contributes to our public safety. So I want to reopen long-term mental health facilities, but I also think at this given point in time, every city hospital should have a mental health wing.
What do you think of City of Yes? terms of housing and addressing the housing shortage?
You know, I liked a lot of components about it, right? Loved doing away with the parking mandates, right? Because it allows for more space to go towards actual housing units that we need. I wasn't in love with the approach. I mean, not only did it not have a good salesman, right? And look, I don't think that a mayor should roll out their affordable housing plan in the third year in. I think that's something that needs to happen pretty soon into your tenure. But also, we're a city of neighborhoods. You can't have a cookie cutter approach or create create an environment where the naysayers in the outer stretches of the city are able to halt the urbanization that is unequivocally going to happen kind of sprawling out of Manhattan. So why not do it the other way around? And I mean, I'm a former community board member, so maybe this is why I think this way, and I have such a deep respect to people who volunteer their time as community board members. That's where you start. I think you have an honest conversation with community boards and say, well, these are the things that we need to get done. These are the goals that we need to meet. So you tell me within a period of time where's the best place to do this in your catchment, in your area. Or if not, well, then the city's going to come in and do it.
So you think, now here's what's up. Do you think that there should have been more engagement with community boards? Is that your...
Yes, and the public at large. Yes.
Interesting. Now, here's what I would say is someone like yourself, someone like myself. There are some places where community boards don't reflect the current population, demographics, right? There are some
or
people,
intergenerational.
Hence why some people were extremely supportive of term limits. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to that? Like, would that be considered?
Well, I think that within the law...
Meaning that may be a form of NIMBYism, too. Certain community boards. That may not be helpful.
There's forms of NIMBYism everywhere. But this is exactly why I don't think that we can allow the NIMBYism to kind of get in the way. I think instead of having a top-down imposing approach, it's actually more of a bottom-up and going in, realizing that whatever the landscape of the community board is, because I have to say, here in Queens, I think we've started to do a good job to turn that around. You know, not in every place, but we've made some headway towards the right look of or the right reflection of our neighborhoods. But nevertheless, they have a vote and they have a voice, and that has to be respected. So I think that we start there. And then actually, you know, have people feel like they have a buy-in into this crisis-solving mechanism. Because at the end of the day, the affordable housing crisis is so big that it is going to take every New Yorker in some capacity to pitch in.
Senator, we're going to wrap this up, and I just want a few more quick lightning round questions. I want you to say one thing about each of the other folks running for mayor. Let's start with Zohran Memdani.
Privileged.
Brad Lander.
Park Slope Progressive.
Scott Stringer.
Pass.
Andrew Cuomo, potentially. He's not officially declared.
A lot of baggage.
Zona Myrie.
Co-worker.
Michael Blake.
Where's he been?
Eric Adams.
Indicted.
Here's the other. Let's wrap this up. What's it been like running as the only woman in the race?
Oh, that's been really tough. I mean, being a female politician in general is tough, right? Because, you know, in order to do this work, you, have to love people. You have to be out there. And I think it inevitably results, and we saw this with Kamala Harris and heck, even Hillary Clinton and so many others. You know, we get asked if and this was the first question, whether, you know, people are going to call me a bitch or, you know, question my ability to juggle family and work. That was something that happened to me during the Senate run back in 2018. It's politics has long been a good old boys club. And I see it all the time, even to this day, right? And it's so much easier to bully a woman in many ways, whether you're colleagues or people out in the street, and call people names, especially as a woman of color, or especially as an indigenous woman of color at that. So it's difficult, but I'm undeterred.
Long term in this race, Senator, will your decision or your vote on LaSalle matter in terms of Latinos?
I think it matters to some people. You know, I've definitely had conversations where people have asked me why I did not support LaSalle's nomination to be chief judge. And, you know, that's been an honest conversation. I had very serious questions about his labor record, if you can call it that for a judge. It was one particular decision especially, although there were a handful, but one in particular that, I mean, was so bad that it got appealed by a higher court. And that's of concern to me. I thought some of the other criticism was unfounded, like people who were saying that Judge LaSalle was anti-choice, when really it was a question of a subpoena, whether or not someone should be subpoenaed. So to me, it was, you know, being a representative of my movement, the labor movement, and making sure that we have pro-worker judges on the bench. And you know, I do extensive work to make sure that we have diversity on the bench, even here in Queens County. That's kind of one of my side projects.
The casino.
Heard of it.
Thoughts? Is there a way to get you to a yes?
No.
Okay. Best day on the campaign?
Oh, my best day on the campaign? It's got to be the first volunteer meetup that we had. Listen, I felt great. You know, as soon as we announced, not only did we get donations from all 5 boroughs on day one, we got volunteers who signed up from all of the 5 boroughs. And they actually came out to the first volunteer meetup. It was in Long Island City. We hit the streets, which felt great. Everybody knows I love people. I love being in the streets, talking to people. And there was one particular mom, this is a good anecdote, a mom that I met on the streets of Long Island City who donated on the spot after me talking to her and telling her my experience as a woman and how badly we need childcare, and how I actually have a plan that I know works because it's based on the work that we did for universal pre-K. So it's not a shot in the dark. You know, I actually have plans to back up the things that I'm fighting for. And you'd be surprised how much that resonates with people.
Worst day?
No, I don't think I've had a worst day yet. You know, I mean, I announced in September. I've literally been running for mayor for a little over 2 months. And it's been tremendous to see the support and the hunger of working people to have a real fighter. And that's why I'm here, to fight like a mother for my people.
Let's wrap this up. Anything I forgot to ask you? Anything you want to add?
I don't know. There's so much to talk about. You tell me.
For the sake of time, and I know you have other things to tend to, I appreciate you taking this time to talk to me.
Yeah, of course, anytime.
A good walk down memory lane, so all the best to you. Thank you so much.
All right.